I like classical music, I like Robert Schumann. One of the masterpieces by Schumann is Humoresque, where he does something wonderful. Do we have here, I will play this game. I hate this boasting with the strings and so on, but I will. Oh, but it looks bad. Everything will collapse. No, it will not. Okay. This piece of piano does something very strange. It's written on 3 lines of notes. You have left hand, right hand, and then you have something very mysterious, which was popular in German romantic music, so-called Augenmusik, music just for the eye. So let's say one note line, the middle one, the lower. Let's say this is what you play with the left hand, what you play with the right hand, and what you play here. Of course, this idea, a typically romantic one, was that when you play, it's very Deleuzean idea of virtuality. And you know the precise nature of what Deleuze calls virtual. Virtual is not just possible what may be. Virtual is something which, as possible, as non-actual, already exerts an efficiency of its pure repetition. Because nothing changes at the level of reality. By reality, I simply mean the actual notes to be played. What changes is just the virtual background, the virtual acting. No? You should play, I don't know how this works. I listened to some recordings. I imagined that I heard the difference, but probably because I wanted to hear it. But you see the art. The art is you repeat exactly the same line, but in such a way that what changes is not what you hear, but what you don't hear. You should play it once so that this somehow, don't ask me how, resonates in it, the other time that it doesn't resonate in it. This, I think, can be perfectly referred to as what Deleuze means by, even a quote I have here, by that there are significant differences in the virtual intensities expressed in our actual sensations. These differences do not correspond to actual recognizable differences. It is that the only change is the change of the virtual relations and so on and so on. My point is that we can maybe apply even the same to ideology. Maybe the true ideological revolution, much more difficult to achieve, is not to change, this is what I was talking, I don't know, yesterday, but it's not just the change in what you explicitly, in explicit or, but you know, like for example, as I was talking yesterday, if I say you shouldn't do this, it has this virtual background. Do I mean you really should do this, do it, blah, blah, blah. And maybe a much more difficult revolution than to change the explicit rules is the revolution in this background, so that I'm saying the same thing, but the virtual resonance, what Deleuze called virtuality behind, is a different one. Again, this is how, in this sense, the radical change is this change where nothing happens in reality. In reality, the same is repeated. But there you discover the radical, pure difference, which is no longer just a difference, concrete difference that you can pin down, but somehow everything is different. Now let me give you another example, which I like even more. Maybe you know it. It's such an evil example that I really love it. It really happened to me. That's why I repeat it all the time. It's from my experience with Doctorow's novel Billy Bathgate. Maybe you know the novel and the movie. Okay, let me tell you what happened to me. I first saw a movie, which I so-so didn't like too much, but my impression was, oh my God, you can see how much better the novel must have been, and how they, sometimes when you do a movie from a masterpiece and it's a bad movie, you can still see the traces of the great point of reference, literary, whatever, masterpiece, and say, oh my God, what a shame, couldn't they recapture, blah, blah. But then something mysterious happened to me. I said, okay, let's then read the novel. To cut a long story short, the novel was even worse. So, this would be another way to mention the Deleuzian repetition. We have the real repetition. First, we have the novel, which, okay, let's agree for the sake of argument, you don't have to, that it's a bad novel, and incidentally, I don't have anything against Doctorov. Some of his works I like tremendously, like his Rosenberg children's story. Did you see the Book of Daniel, I think, and so on? No, it's a lesser-known novel, so nothing against him. But this novel I don't like. And the movie, I don't know, so it would be Dustin Hoffman, Nicole Kidman, and so on, whatever. Okay. So, we have a failed novel, not too good novel. We have a failed repetition, a movie. Both are, let's accept it for the sake of the argument, both are failures. But the repetition itself, retroactively, generates a purely virtual, spectral presence of the true novel as it should have been. And this is what Deleuze is saying. This is how I read a wonderful passage from Deleuze, the absolute Deleuze. Forget about all that anti-Oedipal shit. When I take power, those books will be burned. You know, I'm really a totalitarian. When people tell me about the Nazis burning books, I say, of course, we should condemn this, but let's not, as they put it viciously, let's not throw out the baby with the dirty water. The principle of burning books was good, they just burned the wrong books. I seriously think the two absolute Deleuze books are, I think, Difference and Repetition and The Logic of Sense. They are miracles for me. So, look what he writes here. I quote. He speaks about two presents or two series. While it may seem that the two presents are successive, at a variable distance apart in the series of reals, in fact, they form rather two real series which coexist in relation to a virtual object of another kind, one which constantly circulates and is displaced in them. Repetition is constituted not from one present to another, but between the two coexistent series that these presents form in function of the virtual object. So again, back to Billy Bathgate, the film does not repeat the novel on which it is based. It is rather that they both repeat the unrepeatable virtual X, the true novel whose spectre is engendered by the passage from the actual novel to the actual film. And let's be more precise here. It's not that we should simply conceive the starting point, Doktorov's novel, as they put it, an open work, full of possibilities which can be deployed later, actualized in later versions. Or even worse, that we should conceive the original work as a pretext which can later be contextualized in different contexts, giving a different meaning and so on. What happens here? That's the beautiful formula by Bergson, is that there is the logic we have here is not the standard linear logic of a possibility, of we have a situation A here which has certain possibilities, this can happen, that can happen, and so on. Then one of these possibilities is realized, and so on, and so on. No, is that something that we consider here, of course, not logically, but in the symbolic space, impossible, happens, and when it happens, it retroactively becomes possible. In the sense that, oh my God, how couldn't we see it? It's quite normal. This would be, incidentally, the best definition you can imagine of what Jacques Lacan's means an act. You do something which appears impossible, but it retroactively, as it were, creates its own conditions of possibility. I will even give you, so that you will not accuse me again of trying to do some communist propaganda or what, a very common example. You remember the Cold War, China Russia so-so in Nixon era, but Mao's China, total madness, they want world war. Then Nixon's visit to China. When it happened, it immediately looked normal. Of course, no break, of course, it's rational politics, and so on and so on and so on. So here is another beautiful quote from Bergson, where he accounts for this mechanism. He says, I never pretended that one can insert reality into the past and thus work backwards in time. However, one can, without any doubt, insert there the possible, or rather, at every moment, the possible inserts itself there. Insofar as unpredictable and new reality creates itself, its image reflects itself behind itself in the indefinite past. This new reality finds itself all the time having been possible, but it is only at the precise moment of its actual emergence that it begins to always already have been. That's the wonderful formulation. And this is why I say that its possibility, which does not precede its reality, will have preceded it once this reality emerges. You know, it's like this, how should I put it? Sorry, immediately, just to finish, I'm senile old, just to finish. It's like, you know, when you are in love. You are in love, and then somehow, all of a sudden, it appears as if all your previous life is structured as if it was waiting